When it comes to off-road adventure riding, we all know that the KTM 790, 890 Adventure R platform has the competition beat when it comes to suspension. Unlike the rest of the bikes in this category, it's not sprung like a pogo stick. But in order to hold the weight of the adventure bike up, KTM had to make the suspension quite stiff. And yeah, of course, this helps the bike resist bottoming out like the competition. It does, however, also present some negative side effects too. And if you own this bike, you have experienced it. The bike can give off a very chattery feel on off-road terrain, particularly at slower speeds. And it has a tendency to deflect off rocks and other kind of obstacles too. Now, instead of forking out 8,000 Australian dollars for the cone valve setup, I decided to go to a local suspension tech that is highly recommended in the enduro world to get the bike revalved. Fortunately for you, my dad has exactly the same bike, which means we were able to ride both bikes back to back and compare the suspension changes. That means I can tell you exactly how these changes affected the bike and if it's the right move for you. We're gonna start off by going through some general riding, some rocky terrain. Right here in this clip, although the GoPro doesn't show it, this was quite a steep incline. It was very rocky. To start off with, there was a couple of little boulders that I hopped up, and then it was just a very chattery rock base leading up the hill, winding further to the top. Now on the stock suspension, this was extremely rattly and vibrating. That chatteriness that I spoke about at the beginning of the video, it kind of starts at the forks and it goes all the way through your hands and up into your bones. Now don't get me wrong, this bike is still great, and if it was any other adventure bike, it would just be bottoming out on impact of these rocks. So the KTM does handle that, but with the new valving, these impacts felt really plush, and I didn't have any of that chatteriness coming through. In fact, I was actually able to use some of the rocks and boulders on the first bit of the uphill as jumps up over other obstacles.
I literally can't feel any of this, hey. Well, like I can feel it, again, I can feel it, but it's not harsh, it's not chattery. It's nice and plush. And it gives me, I can use the rocks as obstacles to get over the next one rather than having to back off them.
All right, so let's move to this next video. Here you can see we have this nice little step off over a log on the trail. This was a really fun little chicane here. Lots of S-bends, and then you had this little drop off. The landing was actually pretty smooth here, but it led quickly into another corner, and the surface was quite rocky as well. So there was a lot of chatteriness on the ground, as well as the actual step off itself. Now on my dad's bike with the stock suspension setup, as I came onto the brakes hard, I found that the bike front end was deflecting and skittish a little bit more. It didn't track as nicely, and I didn't have the stability that I do on my bike. And I think that's just due to the extra softness and movement in the travel of the forks due to that better valving, bringing more traction down to that front wheel. All right, so you're probably thinking now, that sounds all great, so what can I do to my bike to get similar results, and what's this gonna cost me? I approached a local suspension tech who's highly recommended in the enduro scene here in Western Australia. I basically put the ball in his court and let him make the decision on how he wanted to tackle this. He wanted to pay some extra attention to the shock and making sure that it would cavitate properly, as he believes that this is one of the main reasons why these bikes are having many shock failures. He does not believe that it's due to the heat of the catalytic converter. When it came to the forks, that's where it got really interesting for me. Now WP, for all their bikes, have separate function forks, meaning that the right fork leg is for rebound dampening and the left fork leg is for compression dampening. Now my tech believes that this is just simply an inferior way to suspend a motorcycle. Not only that, he thinks this goes against suspension 101 completely. So what we did is we converted it to an equal function fork, meaning both fork legs are identical now. So now we have two far better behaving compression pistons at the bottom of the forks, and they are non-adjustable, and that's due to the big axle lugs at the bottom of this motorcycle. You can't access the fork tubes from the bottom. We have the mid pistons which have been revalved, and then on top we have two rebound valves on both fork legs, and these ones are externally adjustable. So that means two red clickers on the top of the forks. And let's be completely honest, when it comes to adventure bike riding, we don't necessarily need massive amounts of adjustability all the time on our bikes. I'm always tackling a range of terrain on every single ride, and I don't have time to stop on the trail, make my adjustments, and then continue riding. Instead, I get to know the bike, I get to know the suspension on all kinds of terrain, and I spend my time trying to fine tune where I like an overall setting for the bike, and then I don't touch it. So with that in mind, I was happy to move to this equal function fork, and have only rebound adjustments on the top of my forks. Overall, for a setup like this, you're looking between 800 and 1,000 Australian dollars. Now compare that to the 8,000 to 9,000 Australian dollars you would pay for cone valves. Now, I've never ridden with the cone valve suspension setup. I'm sure it's pretty fantastic, but is it 10 times better? Overall, what I can say with this setup is that the bike brakes better, it handles better, it has better traction, it's more comfortable, and all that leads to safer, better riding. Once you've got your suspension sorted out, you're really gonna wanna go take an epic trip on it. And if you want some inspiration for that, watch this video right here. In this video, it's the start of a multi-day riding trip I took with my old man through the southwest of Western Australia. An amazing ride, and I think you'll really enjoy this video. Check it out.